Hey devs, April here. Welcome to another Learn with Experts live stream. In this series, I invite folks to deep dive into a particular feature while giving you the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. This channel is all about helping you be the best Appian developer that you can be. So make sure you subscribe to never miss new videos or live streams. I have a couple announcements at the end of the stream, so make sure you stick around to the end. Today's stream is all around our new RPA updates just released in 23.3. We'll be showing off the new design objects, robotic tasks, and robotic pools, as well as the new operations console site. We want you to be a part of the conversation, so don't be a stranger. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout the stream so that we can answer all of your questions. I'm feeling a little under the weather today, so bear with me. But luckily, I have two people who will do most of the talking. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to bring out Senior Product Manager Tien Bui and Product Evangelist Sam Knecht. Hey guys, all right. So before we get into it, why don't we do some intros? Sam, let's start with you. People may remember you from our Record Events live stream a bit ago.
Yeah, I hope so. Hey everyone, my name is Sam Knecht. I'm a Product Evangelist here at Appian. And I'm very excited to be here today to kind of lead us through the build of the RPA process today, and kind of showcase all of these awesome new features that have come out. So excited to be here.
Great. And Tien, what about you? What do you do? Why should we listen to you?
Hey everyone, I'm Tien. I'm a senior product manager at Appian working on process automation related features. Just some background about me. Before this, I was a senior consultant at Appian where I had firsthand experience designing and building applications for customers across multiple industries. And while I did love building Appian apps, I did want a more active role in enhancing and improving the platform, which is why I switched over to my current role. So my team and I have been building these features that you're going to see today for the past couple of months. I'm really excited for you all to see it and experience it.
Great. Thanks so much, Tien. Yeah, so Devs, she knows what your life is like going through and actually building out these projects. So really understands and wants to help you. So let's get into it. Sam, why don't you talk us through the use case that we'll be building today?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone knows how popular soccer or football is in the world today. I'm going to be calling it soccer today. Call it whatever you want. I hope I don't offend anybody here. But yeah, so I thought it would be fun to kind of mirror the Get Soccer Stats with RPA course that we have on Academy Online. So today we're going to be using RPA to kind of go out and fetch a specific player's stats from a public website and kind of pull them in so that we can easily access them, analyze them, look. So you can kind of see we have a list here of a bunch of different players. Let's go ahead and click on Lionel Messi. And you can kind of see we have his career stats. These are strictly related to domestic leagues. This is not World Cup related, so the numbers might be a little different. But it's a really cool way to kind of showcase Appian RPA and how it can bring in information from a public website for our visibility. So a really cool feature here.
Great. Yeah. And this is like related to maybe a real use case where you have some legacy system you're working with that maybe they don't have an API, right? Tien, a use case for kind of doing sort of web scraping.
Yeah. So RPA, just for those who don't know, it's just a form of business process automation that allows you to define a set of instructions for a robot to perform. And it's especially good, as April just said, for automating manual repetitive tasks involving systems that don't have APIs. There's no other way to automate it. So things like entering data, retrieving data, like what we're going to be doing here.
Awesome. Yeah. And you may have used RPA before, but even if you have, you still want to pay attention because it's different now. We're not going into the Appian RPA console. We have a lot of things now native to Designer. So Sam, why don't you take us along? Where are we starting?
Yeah, so we're going to start out in Designer like we always do. And the first thing that we need to do to get Appian RPA started is we need to get a robot online. And so the first thing I'm going to do is actually navigate over here to the operations console. You'll see it's a new site here in our little waffle menu. And so I'm going to go ahead and click into that. And this will take us to a dedicated area where we can kind of create, edit, and configure our robots that we'll be using. So you can see I already have one online, but I'll kind of walk us through what the creation process looks like. And also, Tien, feel free to jump in. I know that this is a brand new thing, so any additions that you may have while I kind of walk through.
Yeah, so the operations console is our first step towards building a broader vision of a hub for operations. We want ops managers to be able to monitor and control operations of your entire Appian environment from this single location. Today, obviously, when you come here, you're going to see robot management. We took the first step to build in robot management here first, but we'll be expanding this in the near future. So here, Sam is creating a new robot that will be performing the work.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy to use. I mean, you kind of just go through this step wizard here, and then you have options here to kind of create your robot, give it name and role operation or permissions. And then you kind of just go through the steps, let it know if you're using a Windows or a Mac. In this case, I'm using a Mac, and so it just gives me the robot to run, and then also the instructions to run it. Now, if I wanted to do something similar, we have a super easy configuration as well for Windows. So if I go ahead and select Windows, we'll go ahead and look here and see what that configuration looks like. But well, it might not work because I'm not on a Windows here, but it'll pretty much give you the installer, and it'll install it directly on your device for you. So it makes the creation process super, super easy for any users. So you can see here, here's the installer, and I would kind of go that way. So that definitely makes the robot creation process much easier.
Yeah, and when it comes to robots, Tien, where do people normally create these robots? Sam's doing it right natively on his Mac, but is that how people normally use it out in the world?
Well, it depends. A lot of developers will just download and locally install on their machines just because it's the fastest way to do development. But in production environments, especially for unattended automation, many of our customers will install it on a virtual machine so that it has its own dedicated space where no one's really logging in and touching it and using the keyboard. So typically agents and robots are installed on a VM.
Cool.
Great. So now we have our robot online, so we're all set there. We can kind of move forward with configuring some of the other objects that are related to getting a robotic task up and running. And so what you're going to notice, which is completely new, is I'm going to be doing all of this within Designer, which is pretty awesome. It definitely makes the process much easier. I don't have to navigate back and forth between items. And so with that being said, you'll see here that there's actually two new design objects, a robotic task and a robot pool. So I'm going to go ahead and start with configuring our robot pool. And maybe while I start configuring this, Tien, you can maybe explain what exactly a robot pool is.
Yeah, so a robot pool is a new design object that is used to group together sets of robots that you would assign your robotic task to run on. They behave very similarly to Appian groups, except instead of adding and removing users, you're adding and removing robots. So Sam is, I think, just going to add his robot that he created in the ops console to this pool. So it will be a robot with one single one, but there's many different ways that you could organize your robot pools. And it totally depends on your organization and which environment you're in. For instance, you could have a robot pool called Excel pool, and every robot or that lives in that pool has Excel installed on the host machine itself. And so anytime you automate Excel, you might send it to this robot pool knowing that the application is already pre-installed. You could also organize robot pools based on your organizational departments, like a finance pool for any robotic tasks that need to run on finance specific VMs. And then you could do what Sam is doing here, which is just dedicating an entire pool to one specific automation. And that is probably the most common design paradigm.
And Tien, so with robots, how many robots can be in a pool, or what is the situation with like robots and VMs? Is that a one-to-one? How many robots can I have?
Yeah, so you can think about a robot as an agent that is installed on a host machine. Technically, you could install different robots on different user sessions of a VM. If you have a specialized type of VM like a Windows server, it gets really technical. But most customers do one-to-one. One robot gets installed on one VM. There's no set limit on the number of robots you might add to a pool, but it just gets hard to manage if you have, hundreds in one pool. So many people typically try to modularize it and group it in more logical ways.
Got it. Cool. All right. What's next?
Yeah, so as mentioned, robot pools are just a great way to kind of organize your robots that you're going to be using. And then with that, I can go ahead and go back, and now we can go start to create our robotic task design object. So this is actually going to be the object that performs our actions for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and name this get soccer stats, give it a description. And then as mentioned, we're going to give it that robot pool that we just created so that all those robots in that pool, aka my robot, will be able to run this process when it's called. And so we're going to go ahead and create this. And I'm sure things will look very similar to what people have seen in the past. Oh, it doesn't like this. Let me get rid of that.
Got some special characters in there.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I haven't seen that before. Okay, here we go. Now we're moving. So I'm sure this will look pretty similar to people. This is kind of our robotic task designer, but as mentioned, it is within Designer. It's not kind of a separate object. So definitely makes things very easy to work with, but yet you still have that familiarity with what we've used in the past. And so to get started, we're actually just going to use the screen recorder here to kind of make Appian do the hard part for us of gathering the actions that our process is going to do. And then we can, from there, tweak it as we would like to make different changes, make it work for our process that we would like, make any enhancements that are needed in order to make it as effective as possible.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say the task recorder is almost always the first step that any designer should take when building a robotic task. It just does so much of the work for you. You point and click, do exactly what you want to be automated, and it will capture the steps for you. So it's getting set up on Sam's machine right now, and he'll walk you through exactly how it works.
Yeah, so as Tien mentioned, I'm going to grab our link here that we're going to be navigating to. But it's going to capture all of my actions for me. And so it definitely makes my life easier because I am able to kind of just do what I would want the robot to do. And it's going to capture all that for me. So you can see I went ahead and put in the link. And over here on the right, you can see it's kind of capturing that action with the URL. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through the actions of what do we want this robot to do every time this process is called. And so, for example, we will look up Lionel Messi as the player, and we will click search. Now, one thing that I think is best practice and also just helps you later on is to update these steps as you're going through. So it'll capture it with kind of generic information, but we want to give it more detailed information of what we're actually doing. So for this one, we might do search player name and update value with Lionel Messi. And then this one is going to be search player. So when we click that button, it'll search for that player. And so now the next thing we want to do is we want to get some of this player's information. So you can see here, RPA is kind of giving us some actions to take. The first thing I want to do is I want to grab Lionel Messi's headshot for our data. And so I'm going to call this get player headshot. I'm going to change this to the XPath. And then looks like we're good there. And then I'm actually going to save this into a process variable. We're going to call this player headshot. Set it to type text. When we create, you can see that it saves into that value. So we're good there. We got the player headshot. And now we're actually going to scroll down to the data table where we actually want to gather our data. So I'm going to go down here, and you can kind of see there's this table here. And so before I get into actually gathering some of our data, I am going to do one thing. I'm going to first click on this cell here, and I'm going to call this interact with table. And you'll see why I did this later on when we're actually configuring our process. But by doing this, I'll be able to actually scroll down to the table before interaction, which is kind of a best practice so you can see kind of where we are within our navigation screen here. So I am going to do interact with table, and I'm going to call this XPath as well. And I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do get attribute, and I'm going to call this get seasons played because we want to know how many seasons that player played, because then we'll be able to loop over each season and get that data for each row of the table. And so again, I'm going to save this information. You can see we're getting that attribute value there. And this is one great thing about Appian RPA is as you're going through, it kind of tells you what data you're getting. So I can see here, I got 20 seasons. That's kind of what I was looking for. And I'm going to save this into a different variable called seasons played. And this is going to be of type number integer. So we're good there. Now I'm going to actually go through and actually start to gather some of our season data. So I'm going to get the season, the matches played, the goals and assists. And I'm going to follow similar steps to what I've been doing in these previous steps. But I thought, Tien, maybe you could discuss a little farther. I know there are some new table actions that are being offered through Appian RPA. This one doesn't necessarily make a great fit because we do have some merged cells and some icons and pictures in here, but it could be an easier way to maybe gather data in the future using this new action.
Yeah, for sure. So we recognize that grabbing full table data was an extremely common use case. So we've recently released a new low-code action in Appian RPA that lets you grab the entire contents of a table, even if the table spans multiple different pages. So that is available for you to use. We are working on building it into the task recorder so that you can simply hover over the table and record the grabbing of all the data at once. Like Sam did mention, this one is a bit more complex of a table just because it has images and merged cells and things like that. So you might, if you use the action, might have needed to configure it slightly differently. But yes, really good action to use if you have to grab data from a table.
Tien, could you just maybe give a quick overview? So I see we get that little actions, and then there's like, is element present, get attribute. What do those things kind of mean?
Yeah, so for web automation, our tool uses Selenium. It's an open source framework widely used for automating web browsers. And so in Selenium, locators, that's what these things are called, are used to find specific elements on the web pages. And there's many different types. XPath is one of them. CSS selectors is another. They're probably the most commonly used ones, and they let us uniquely identify content on a web page. And so as Sam moves through and grabs data, he's uniquely finding their identity so that when we go repeat this, we can grab the same exact information.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. I just wanted to point it out because people may be looking at this and thinking, well, this doesn't seem as low code, but really it's because we're interacting with something else that's not Appian, but the task recorder is doing a lot to help us find those things. Because I don't know, if I had no experience with this, if I would know to put / div 6 div, but Appian, this is one of the beautiful things I love about Appian. It helps you get started, and then you can look at what it's done to kind of understand, and then you always have the power to go in and manipulate. So
yeah, that's right. And I think one great thing about Appian as well is just the interactivity that you have with it. I mean, to be completely honest, April, I still don't know if I fully understand what this / div does. I'm going to be completely honest, but the great thing is it's interactive. And so like you can see here that we have this interact with section over here on the right. And you can see that with that value, it's highlighting our row 1 for the assist column. And you can see that we have this TR1. And so to me, that kind of symbolizes table row 1. But if I change that value to 2, you can see how that value jumps down to the second row. And if I change it to 3, it jumps down to the third row. And so that's really good information for us to know that based on what row we're in or what this value is, we can grab different data based on which row we are. And so that's some knowledge that we can take so that when we go to enhance this process, we can kind of update that value based on which loop we're in to make sure we're grabbing the correct data point.
Yeah, and looping, we actually got a question in the chat from Simonsky a little bit ago. Is it possible to put some action into a loop, like for I in range X, run this thing? And I said, hold on a bit, because we'll get there. And so knowing which row we're in is going to help us do just that and loop over dynamically however many rows there are for each player. Yeah.
That's right. And so I think we're pretty much ready here to actually go ahead and start diving into that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the browser here just as kind of a cleanup action. And then I'm going to go ahead and select done. I'm going to give this group a name for get soccer stats. And we're going to add the group. And so this is really where Appian RPA does a lot of the work. As you'll see, it'll save this recording and it's going to spit out a bunch of actions for us that we can kind of enhance to our liking. So just like that, you can see we have kind of the actions that we did. And by naming them, we have a better idea of what was going on with this. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag our open browser into the setup action and the close browser into the cleanup action. And Tien, maybe you can explain why this is a best practice of why maybe people should get into a habit of using these setup and cleanup sections.
Yeah, so especially cleanup is super important. It ensures that no matter what goes wrong with your robotic task during its execution, it will always perform the cleanup, which means the next time it goes to run, at least it's a pristine, clean environment, and there's not, leftover unclosed browsers from the previous session that potentially could have failed. So cleanup always runs no matter what. Setup is important because setup and cleanup work together. If you want to leverage features like skip setup cleanup, which help with more efficient batch processing, in which case, if you have 10 consecutive tasks that need to run one after another, we would run the setup section for the first one, skip setup every single time in between, and then we would clean up all the way at the end. So then you don't have to, open and close the browser for every execution, saving you a lot of time.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's definitely a very valuable thing to know, just like as a best practice to maybe enhance or make your processes as efficient as possible. So now that we've kind of gathered all this information, we're going to go ahead and start to enhance our process here. And so the one thing is I'm going to click into our interact with table, and I'm going to go ahead and select the scroll to element before interaction. That's why I did this action, was so that when we go to grab the data from the table, the robot will actually scroll down to that table before starting to gather the data. I think this is kind of a best practice just to make sure that we are navigating to the correct table and pulling the correct information. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create 2 new process variables. This one is going to be player name. It is going to be of type text because I'll give it an initial value of Lionel Messi, and this is a parameter. And the reason we want this one is so that we don't want to, every time this process is ran, have it search Lionel Messi. We want it to be able to run for any player that we provide it. And so we're going to update that variable so that whoever that player is, it'll run it for that player. The other variable I'm going to do is all seasons. So we already have a single season variable, but we want to make sure that we're holding all the seasons. And so this is going to be an array because it will be multiple. And we want to make sure that as these seasons are being collected, that they're being collected in one single variable that we can use later on. So now that we have these variables and we've updated some of our actions, here's where we can kind of get into the fun part with the looping. So I'm going to go ahead and drag it in here. You can see it's very similar to what you've seen with other Appian objects of the drag and drop. And so we're going to drag that action in, and then we want it to loop, for each of these 4 objects. So we want it to, for every season, we want it to get the year, the matches played, the goals, and the assists. And so we're just going to drag it right into that object. And then from there, we can kind of configure it to our liking. And so the first thing I'll do is we want it to repeat. And as mentioned, we want it to repeat for however many seasons that player played. So it'll get every data point from all their seasons. Now that we have that, I'm going to drag and evaluate expression in. Wrong spot. Let me see if I can get it in there. Okay. And what this one is going to do is we want to take our single season process variable and we want to append it to all of our seasons so that after each loop, it'll append it to all of our seasons so that we can continue to store that data. And so we're at a pretty good spot here. The last thing we need to do, as mentioned, is we need to make sure that this process will run for every row. And so we're actually going to go back into these values here. And you can see this is what we saw earlier, this TR1. But now we don't want it to run for the first row every time. And so I'm just going to update this to run for whatever index that we are on. So if we're on the 3rd loop, it's going to look at the 3rd row. And if we're on the 5th loop, it's going to look at the 5th row. And so just this simple update to our code here will tell the robot to look based on what index we're running. And so we were able to kind of use that knowledge that we learned from within the screen recording to implement it into our process here.
Nice.
Yeah, and I would say what's so powerful about Appian RPA is that it can leverage the power of the rest of the platform. Just the fact that you can call expressions, rules, and things like that makes it so that you can reuse other objects throughout the platform while using your own, while designing a robotic task.
So can I make like expression rules and call them
Yes.
in here and everything like that? That's pretty cool. We have a question about the XPath. Is it absolute or relative to you? XPath, do you know?
Both options are available for you to configure with.
Okay. I'm not sure what that means, but if you know what that means, I hope that's helpful for you.
If you click the selector option
Yes.
right there, it'll show you all the different types of selectors that we support. I believe we support both absolute and relative. I can also get back to you.
Add a comment later if that's not true.
Exactly.
Cool. All right, let's keep going. And, chat, if you have any questions or want to talk about your experiences with RPA and tell Tien, hey, bring this back to the team, here's your chance.
I want to make sure that our variable here is saving correctly. I think I typed this in correct. Season.
Yeah, you might want to just save your changes and potentially refresh.
That is smart. Saving changes. I don't want to lose all my work here. So, okay, I think we're good. We have pretty much enhanced our robotic task to handle looping, to make sure we're getting all the correct data. Now, there are further elements that you can use to maybe enhance your robotic task even more. So we could handle maybe like is web element or is web attribute present. So we could put kind of a conditional in there if a player's headshot doesn't exist to maybe skip this get player headshot step so that our process doesn't error. So there are further things that we could do in order to enhance our process. And then also, Tien, I know that there are some really cool new Excel features as well. I'm not sure if we've touched on those a little bit, but so if you wanted to even further enhance your process of maybe interacting with an Excel workbook or something like that, you would also have that option as well.
Yeah, so you did touch on more robust practices. Things like executing a robotic subtask is another thing that I just want to call out. You can call other robotic tasks from within a robotic task. That just allows you to build more modular tasks and call them from within each other. And yeah, you did mention Excel. Excel capabilities are relatively new to Appian RPA. We've recently introduced a couple more, even in today's release of our latest Appian RPA release. You can manipulate Excel workbooks, refresh data, filter pivot tables, etc. So feel free to try to automate whatever you can with Appian RPA if you can't automate it through other means.
Yeah.
Tien, you mentioned RPA releases. Maybe a little known thing to some is RPA actually releases more often than just our platform quarterly releases, right?
Yeah, we release twice as often. So every 6 weeks, there's a new RPA release.
Just trying to show off over here.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
So within the matter of about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we went ahead and already created our entire robotic task. So we did that super quickly. We were also doing some pauses there, so you definitely could have done it faster. But now that we kind of have that task built up, we're actually going to go ahead and go back to our designer and implement it into our process. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to edit our existing integration.
One thing, Sam.
Oh, yes.
Can you go back?
Yes.
So if we were building this to your designer, robotic task designer,
yes.
If we were building this normally, the right next step to do would be to click the test button and actually test it on your machine before actually integrating into a larger process. I highly recommend checking the debug option here. It just allows you to run your tests in a very controlled environment, meaning that you can step through it one by one. You can set breakpoints. You can edit variables and disable things if they're not working. It just gives you a very powerful testing experience. We don't have to do it here, obviously, but just something to pull out.
Sam is going to see how confident he is. This is going to work first try. So
yeah, we are. I can't emphasize enough, Tien, how I'm glad you brought that up because the debugging feature is very powerful. It will allow you to kind of make sure that your process is ready to go before actually just dumping it into a real world environment. But for today's case, in the matter of time, we're just going to move forward and we're going to see if my building skills are pristine, I guess, and we'll see if it works when we run it at the end. So, but yes, that is a good call out for debugging and testing. Okay, so we're back in our integration object. You can see we have our RPA connected system, and we're going to execute a robotic task. So I'm going to go ahead and select the one that we created earlier. And you see all the information populates. Now, again, we don't want it to run for Lionel Messi every time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly create a player name rule input of type text so that this will run for whichever player we give it instead of Lionel Messi every time. So we're just going to make that quick update. We're going to keep the robot as first available and we'll click save. So our integration is set there. And
so,
now I can, sorry.
No, you're good. So I do love how easy connected systems make creating a lot of integrations. It's beautiful. But Tien, why do we need a connected system integration to do this?
When we first hooked up Appian RPA to the broader product, it was the fastest way to allow our customers to start working with Appian RPA, connect it to itself. But now that we've actually brought Appian RPA into the broader product, we will be releasing a lot of enhancements that will make working with RPA much easier than before. Today, you still have to work with connected system to Appian RPA and integrations, but in our next release in 23.4, hopefully we will be able to completely deprecate the connected system, and you'll be able to just call your robotic task directly from your process model. No more need for all of these extra objects.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Similar to portals, right? We wanted to get portals out really quickly to make a integration first, but now it's right built in. So, we want to be agile and get you things quickly and then make your life easier every release.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good segue into our next step here of actually implementing it into our process. Tien, as you said, there might in the future releases be a world where you won't need that integration and you can actually jump directly to the step of dragging that execute robotic task smart service right into your process modeler and then continuing to design. But so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to remove our activity chain into our robotic task. And what I'm going to do is start to set up configuring this smart service so that it runs when it's called or when the process is ran. So we're going to call our integration that we just created. And you're going to see here in the inputs, we have a player name. That value is going to be from our record, the name that is submitted from a form, which you will see later on. And then what we need to do is we need to configure two outputs. And so what are the two outputs from our, if you can think back to when we created our robotic task, we have two variables that we want to access. The first one is our player headshot. We want to be able to get that image link from the robotic task. So we are going to grab that and save that into the player headshot. And then we're going to create one more. And let's see if I can remember. I'm always struggling to remember my variable names from my robotic task. I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure I called it all seasons.
I guess we'll see, Sam.
We'll see. Yeah, I'm like 99% positive that it's all seasons. And we are going to save that into our related season record. And so one thing is we're going to utilize the awesome new write one-to-many feature here within our node. So we will be writing our player data as well as all of their related season data, all within one node, which is pretty sweet. So we'll go ahead and click OK. Our robotic task is now configured. And so let's go ahead and look at our write record node real quick. You can see that we are going to be feeding it our record input, which will have our player and our season data. And then one thing to note now is that if we're writing events related to this, we have this new automation type. And so maybe, Tien, you can go further into this, of maybe what the purpose behind this is.
Oh, it's just to help you track the automation type so that you can do better reporting at the end. This is definitely a good chance for you to choose the option for RPA because this will be fully automated with RPA. But if you, for instance, did some exception handling in this process where, for instance, maybe a robot down, something went wrong, you would change up the write records event down that path to say other or a human did it instead. And that way you can track what is the value of the automation.
Yeah. And so this is, like you said, it's just a great way to show kind of how your processes are running, how much automation is being involved. And so I'm going to go ahead and click never just because I'm not writing events for this, but it is there if you have some events being written. So it looks like we are.
Just wanted to give a call out, Sam, to your live stream debut a few months back,
yeah,
where you walked us through record events. So if you haven't had a chance to check those out yet, they were new last 23.2 release. Go check out that live stream. We had a lot of fun with the PM, Josh Linder, and learn more about how great record events are.
Yeah, that's right.
Tien, I had a question. Why do we have to remove activity chaining?
Activity chaining makes sense for when, a human is going through the process and you want it to be a consecutive process. But since we're sending the task to a robot somewhere else, it doesn't really make sense to activity chain.
Right. Yeah, it's helpful if I click next on a screen. I want to see the next screen without having to go and click into the task again. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think it's time to run this. This is always the nerve-wracking part because I think I set everything up correctly. We didn't do any debugging or testing, so we're just going to kind of jump right into it. I do want to verify that my robot is still online real quick. Okay, so we are good there. So now let's navigate back to our site object here, and this is where we're going to run it. So when I input a player name here, it'll call that robotic task. That robot will actually go out and retrieve the information. So for example, today we'll do a Kylian Mbappe. I think I said his name correct.
Killian, I think, but
Kylian.
yeah, Mbappe.
Kylian. Okay, that was close.
Yeah.
But so we're going to put his name in, make sure everything's good, and I'm going to click Get Stats. And so this is going to call our robotic process. Now, in the real world, this would probably be running on a virtual machine, as Tien said at the very start. But because the robot is configured to my computer, it's actually going to appear here on my screen. And so we can kind of see the robot go through its steps of opening up the interface or of the website. It'll input his name.
Sam, put your hands up. I don't trust that you're not doing this.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I could be really fast. I could maybe be super fast in my data collection, but I don't think I'm as fast as a robot here. So you'll see it scroll down to our table. It's going to kind of go through each row and loop over all of the necessary information that we told it to get, collect all the data, and it should at the very end close the window out. I pray. Okay, it did. So let's take a look. I'm actually going to refresh our record list here.
Oh no!
It might take a second.
Let's see.
There he is.
There he is.
And so we'll open that up, and we have all of our data within the matter of seconds.
Nice job.
Cleanly
Sam.
displayed. Looks beautiful. And I didn't have to do anything. I mean, it took me about 10 minutes to set it up, and now we could run this for whoever we wanted. And it's a really fantastic way to maybe interact with public websites and stuff like that to gather data we want. So glad everything worked out great here.
Sam, you continue to make yourself look like a genius.
I know. I think that's a common theme of these live streams is I continue to look like a genius, but I have to give all the credit to Appian. It makes life so much easier. So I'm not a genius. Appian is just so easy to use.
Cool. We have another question from Simon Sky. Will the RPA script update with Appian updates? For instance, recently Appian updated class select box to combo box. Do I still have to update RPA scripts myself? Hopefully that made sense, Tien. Did you follow that?
I did not follow that. But no, your robotic tasks should be built in the most robust way possible to account for potential changes. That's why choosing the right selectors are important. The changes to any like web page type stuff should be handled by you, but anything that changes in general, we will try to accommodate for in the product. So for instance, if, I don't know, Windows changes the concept of a combo box to something else, we'll probably build that into the product for our customers.
Cool. Yeah. And then I think there was another positive to now having these as native design objects, the robotic tasks. And was that with deployments? Can you remind me,
Yes.
Tien?
Exactly. So Sam, if you go back to your application, right? So the best part about these new design objects just being in your applications as usual, not just for, organizational purposes, but the fact that you can add them to packages, you can export them, import them, and just overall leverage the DevOps capabilities. So you can now deploy robotic tasks and pools alongside all the rest of your application objects. You'll be able to inspect them, see what's missing. It just definitely simplifies the development and deployment process.
Yeah. When Compare and Deploy came out, I remember just how exciting that was. People in the chat, if you have any more questions, try to get them in. Otherwise, we'll start to wrap up here. I had another thought and it just slipped my mind.
Yeah, I will say, April, I hope I'm not jumping over your shoes here, but this course is available on Academy. I'm not sure if you were going to touch on that, but if users or if anybody out there wants to maybe learn how to do this themselves, this course is available on Academy Online. So you can kind of walk through, and it's a complete build from scratch. So today we kind of just focus on RPA, but you can kind of do everything from scratch. So that's a great way to maybe get more hands-on with these new features.
Yeah, great call out, Sam. And I think you made that course, didn't you? No?
I did. So all feedback is appreciated, although I hope it's good feedback.
Yeah. Only good feedback.
Only good feedback, yeah.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of other RPA related courses on Academy Online and also, on the YouTube channel. And let us know if you have other questions or ideas for courses related to RPA. Anything else, Tien or Sam? I'm trying to think. My sick brain is running a little slow today.
I think I'm all set. I think I'm glad it went great. I appreciate you guys kind of helping walk through and explain all these awesome features to everyone out that's watching. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Tien?
I don't think I have anything else. I look forward to any feedback that anyone has when you upgrade to version 23.3 and finally get to try out these new design objects and capabilities.
Awesome. All right. Well, Tien, Sam, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today. Hope to have you both back on another live stream soon. And I mentioned at the top some announcements before we close out. For any of our developers in the DC area, next Tuesday, September 19th, we'll be having a dev night at Nats Park, and we still have some spots left if you're interested. You can register at the link. We'll drop it in the chat and in the description of the video. As long as I'm feeling better by then, I will be there, so hope to see you there. Appian Europe is coming up fast. We're just 2 months out, actually, and we'll be hosting the Live Build Challenge again, but changing up the format, and it will allow for increased participation. So if you want a free pass to attend the conference, apply by October 15th at community.appian.com/challenges to compete. Our next stream will be on Thursday, September 28th at 11 a.m. Eastern to discuss working with documents in Appian. So to our lovely audience, thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed the stream, please hit the like button and let us know. If you have more questions, ideas for future streams, drop a comment below or head over to the Appian community discussion boards. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.